Next item, item 4, is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. I think these are all agenda items. Okay. All right, number 5, discuss and consider minutes of the regular village board meeting of January 7th. Any comments, corrections, or additions?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second. All right, motion and second to approve. Any other discussion? Okay. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. Item 6A, discuss and consider engineering costs for splash pad and shelter at Bakken Park. Mike, I'm assuming that's you. You want to come up here?
With me, Carter Arndt, AIA, architect. Carter, I was showing him that we have this display so that we
Great.
All right. Okay. Any comments, questions for Mike on what's in your packet regarding the splash pad? I know we have several people scheduled to speak, but Mike, if you have anything regarding the costs or you want to put everything up there for us, that would be great.
Sure, I asked Carter to come in to explain what the services include, and then I think he's got a schedule.
Okay.
And then there's some other things that have come up in the last week that I want to explain too.
All right.
Certainly. Yeah, I can start. Good to be here, everybody. As I was introduced already, I'm a senior project architect with MSA. Been with MSA since 1990. Even had the privilege to design this building back in the early 90s. So I've been around a while. Hopefully it's serving you well still. But that was a long time ago, though. So at any rate, as an architect with MSA, I'm kind of our aquatics team leader. So we do a lot of aquatic projects, from municipal pools to splash pad projects, all associated services to go with those. And so we have a wealth of expertise just in dealing with these types of projects, very much with our Park and Recs programs. You know, we enjoy working with communities and rolled out a whole bunch of splash pads, especially over the past 3 years or so. So we have good familiarity with that. Relative to the project before you over at Bakken Park, relative to it currently proposed is a splash pad and a support building that will kind of house all your mechanicals for the splash pad, as well as have restrooms, family restroom, and support for a shelter area. So we're looking forward to the opportunity. We really haven't started designing any of this yet. It was kind of scheduled to get going this year, and that's a little bit of the schedule we have laid out to get started. But we're looking forward to come and answer any questions you have about the services associated with developing the engineering and the architecture for these projects. Typically the process involves our initial meeting to talk through things, but then we're also coordinating with the splash pad vendor and also kind of sorting out your options of how to procure that equipment to make sure that that you as a municipality are complying with the procurement laws and such, and then we work with you to develop the design of the splash pad, the engineering, the concrete design for under it, the landscaping around it with our landscape architects, to the mechanicals, integration. Ultimately, I understand you're considering a flow-through splash pad, which deals with basically, you know, water flowing through the system and going into the storm water system for draining it away. So it also deals with the engineering to handle that flow of water, because in a nice hot summer day, you could be flowing through 40,000 gallons a day of water, so you have to kind of build a system in to handle that. So that's part of our services, the engineering on that. And then the building itself, though we do a lot of similar building types, every project is basically a new one in large regard, because everything's a little different. Been working with Sean a little bit on some ideas about some of the components of this one. We kind of built it off of some other similar projects we've had, but we altered it to get the mechanical room in for the splash pad in theory, and then also family restrooms and even some further storage for some of your park programming out there. So kind of have some ideas in mind for what it's going to be included, but we're looking forward to kind of getting together and kind of developing it further. also balancing it with your budget. We know there's some budget numbers, and obviously this will be a detail as we get into the process. We'll work towards, but we're real advocates to kind of understand your budget and then design a project to meet your budget, and make sure that we're your advocate. So on bid day, the bids come in your favor. So that's kind of a high level review of that. But basically, our services for 2019 take you through design of the facility and construction documents. So that's putting together the drawings, the specification manuals, the bidding documents, so that you basically can bid it in early, potentially 2020. And I guess the schedule that over here, just at a snapshot, basically, to kind of start design. We could start next month with the design and work. The goal here is in the design phase is to actually come up with the final designs and budgeting. So you have some dollar amounts that you can be expecting towards the project, and then give you a chance for budgeting and making sure everybody's on board with those numbers. And then the idea here would be to develop the final engineering and architecture basically later in the year, to basically gear you up for a January bid release of the following year. Typically, these kind of projects will construct, ideally over the summer months, the warm weather months. And so with an early bid date like that, you kind of get the best numbers, and you have an opportunity to hopefully open it that year for a little while if things work out. So that's kind of the target ultimately would be to try to allow for a 2020 opening potentially if the project, I'm kind of forecasting forward, and whether or not everything goes that way is going to be up to the village, of course. But that's kind of a snapshot of some of our ideas about how the schedule could proceed if you do proceed with the project fully. So, are there any questions or comments about things?
I just had one. I guess our budget process typically starts around October, and looking at, like you said, the construction design phase there at number 2, would we have it reasonably well nailed down about October when we do our budget plan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, our goal would be at the end of actually the design phase in May, we'd be there'd be numbers that would be numbers that everybody could start kind of thinking about, and actually help make sure the project then is calibrated to those budget numbers that everybody's in agreement towards. But by all means, by that point in time, the budget numbers can be established, at least from an engineering, architectural end, but then and then we can proceed accordingly once approved.
So, so based on your experience of doing multiple projects like this, based on the size that's kind of been laid out, is this a typical size? That's one question. Second question is, what is the size of the communities that are actually designing and putting these in that you've had experience with?
Certainly. As far as the exact size, I don't know off the top of my head. There's been a conceptual design that CRS has put together that you've maybe seen some of the renderings on. CRS is actually a vendor that we've worked with really almost on all of our work over the past 3 years. Obviously local to Wisconsin, local to Verona. So in that regard, we have a lot of familiarity with them and have had successful projects. That's probably a reason why we keep on working with them, and communities that we work with them. I don't know the exact square footage of that splash pad design, probably around 2,500. Seems appropriate for this size facility, 25. I think that we're working on one in Verona right now, which I think is like maybe 3,200 or 3,000 for the one that's under construction in Verona. Other communities we've worked in is Wisconsin Rapids, and then Mauston, and then Rain Gardner, who couldn't be here today, who's kind of the head of our Park and Rec community of practice. And she's rolled out a whole number of them for other communities, like in Nakusa and Necedah and other communities like that we've worked in. A lot of our aquatic facilities, we did like the Appleton pool that recently opened a couple years ago now, working with Wisconsin Rapids on their new municipal complex, and maybe someday at Verona on theirs. But so there are some projects that we've done.
Okay, so most of those communities are larger Cottage Grove, I think, in my mind.
Well, Boston's probably maybe,
Maybe comparable.
yeah, comparable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what Deerfield is, how big theirs is?
It's got 5 features. I don't know the exact square footage, a couple hundred. It's not very big. Sorry, I don't know the exact square footage.
Anyone else? Otherwise, we did have several people that registered.
I
to
had one
speak.
question, Jack.
Yeah.
I thought part of the budget process, we approved or agreed upon $50,000 for architecture and engineer. Is that, am I thinking of something different, or?
It's in the financial management plan, but it was not budgeted, it was decided to take it out of the budget and address it individually.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
So.
And it was 70,000, so.
These funds are coming from where currently?
Well, they're not going from anywhere right now, but if it's approved, they would be paid for by park development funds, which come from residential development for park improvements, and then, at least in the plan, we would eventually go out for, it would be part of a larger borrowing, and then eventually those funds would be reimbursed back.
I have a question.
Sure.
Additionally, let's see, is the $70,000, is that a typical amount for the type of work that you're gonna be doing? I mean,
Certainly.
this type
and
of a project?
It is relative to, and it kind of incorporates two things. You know, I think that number breaks down as 50,000 for the kind of the leading the project and doing the building, architectural and engineering, and then the 20,000 for dealing with the splash pad itself and coordinating with the vendor on that and designing the site features around that for bidding documents. As far as typical park projects, it's right in line. It's probably even a little lower. You know, Mike's good at making sure we keep our pencil sharp, speaking candidly, but at any rate, so you know, we had discussions, and it's a very, very fair number. And as far as our services that we offer, are they in a time and material, not to exceed basis typically, right?
Yeah, it's
Or
our,
time material.
we want not to exceed.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other items that came up, unless somebody had questions on that, yet,
Just quickly, do you ever run into every unforeseeables ever that change that cost at all?
Well, unforeseeables could be site subsoil conditions, you know, if there's some surprises about some bad soils. Stormwater provisions, if we find out that you don't have an infrastructure capable of handling this kind of water, you know, and that you can engineer your way out of typically and solve. But I mean, that could potentially be some, you know, if we have to build new, you know, stormwater detention basins of a larger scale, you know, that can be an unforeseeable, that's some added cost. But other than that, I guess none come to mind.
and on taking those two items, the subsoils out there are terrific, and it's sand, and the pond along the south line is just, you can hear it perking. It's quite a high porosity sand that goes from all the way north to Rugby Club. And when they were excavating and doing earthwork, you know, I was monitoring what was out there in the subsoils. The stormwater is something we got to take care of. And Eric Thompson had modeled the park back when it came into the Regional Planning Commission's urban service area. And so we will be comparing, you know, what we're putting in. It's not really like just putting a concrete pad in and saying, okay, this is how much impervious area. Now we're kind of adding. It's one where we're going to add water in the summer, even when it's not raining. Probably mostly when it's not raining. So that's one where we just need to make sure we have storage. Going north, for instance, with it, there's a culvert under Phyllis Road, and that would be a concern to continue to kind of add to an issue there. But we do have a dry basin on the south side of the driveway entrance into the park that would likely be the place that we use to settle out the water that's coming off the spray park. One other issue that came up, it's kind of an old issue, is that it's related to the sale of the land to the north of this site. Generally, this site's going to be east of the parking lot and somewhere around or inside the ring of bike path that's out on P.B. Bakken Park. And to the north is Wisconsin Rugby Club. And there's other interests for the park in the private use. And we were getting more information on how to deal with the fact that the land was originally purchased using DNR stewardship funds. So they cover 50% of a lot of things. I'm not sure, going back 20 years or 15 years when that was done, if it was 50% of the whole land sale, but it covered the park when it was purchased. And when Wisconsin Rugby Club land was sold, if that was 2009 in that area, the village did know that there was recorded on the certified survey map a requirement to contact the DNR and get their approval for converting some land if you sell something off to the private entity. And there was a plan put forth to do that because the village at the same time was applying for part of the farm golf course. So the DNR accepted that as the plan to convert that area out. Later, the village decided not to buy that land, or something fell through, and so now we still sit with that problem. So in talking to them recently, they would actually look at your capital plan. And so like the shelter, something that would qualify for a stewardship grant would not be the spray pad. It can't be that active. They've gone to passive recreation is all they'll fund with stewardship. But the bathroom shelter and supporting the trail, supporting the park would be something they would consider. So the first step in all this is to get the rugby club land and any other land that might have private interest appraised. And that's going to be coming before the Parks Committee on Wednesday to get approval to get it appraised. Get it appraised, find out the value of that land only, and then compare that to the stewardship project. So if the shelters, say the budget for that was $400,000, and the DNR could contribute $200,000 normally under a grant. We're not applying for the grant, but we're looking for that $200,000 now to apply against converting out the rugby club land. And it may or may not. I don't know I'm not up to date on what parkland goes for right there, but getting that appraisal, if it's south of 30, 40,000 an acre at 8 acres, doing the math, it's going to be close to that, half that value of the future shelter. So, and they'll look at other things like the DNR trail going through the park. So passive recreation items, and that was actually a really positive thing because their other method was to buy like valued land somewhere, and if you don't have plans for that, it's kind of a lot of expense. So it might be another use for these projects from the first blush.
We did get permission from the DNR to sell them, and it wasn't tied to any specific project at the time. But the thought was that we were going to buy the farm, and that was going to be the replacement. And so what Mike's talking about is kind of a new twist in all of this, that they're now looking at different types of replacement. But we always knew that this was going to have to be replaced in some fashion.
So,
I guess I still think we have some concerns, in particular children and safety and how they're going to get there, how they're going to get out of there. Parking, we're not in a park in the middle of our community, we're in a park and an outskirts. I'm just not sure we're putting the cart before the horse here, and that we need to resolve those issues before we spend money on engineering costs or something like this. Because those problems aren't going to go away.
I think that's actually a question for Sean and team, not.
Well, I meant directly.
Not Mike.
Yeah, if there's particular issues with the Vilas Road and the access,
Yeah.
those are things, we don't currently have a capital plan for Vilas Road. We had a developer interested in developing one side of it, which certainly we talked about lowering the speed limit at that time because of the new density of driveways and things that would have been put there, but they're not. He's not putting that forward right now.
Yeah, we do have the bike path to also consider in the budget cycle too, and that's another recreational thing that we are committed for, I think, next year based on the grants and everything getting started.
Getting started next year, it's a longer process on
Yeah.
that TAP grant, but that's 2021
Yeah.
construction.
So that's also got to be kind of in the back of your mind as far as what we have to consider as far as outlays next year. And we will, now that the builder's not moving forward on the other side of Vilas, that's another leg of that trail that we were not predicting on actually having to cover. So we do now have to cover that. Because it's not going to be put in by that builder because he's not developing his land.
We have got some good grants for the bike path. I mean, it's kind
Yeah.
of committed at this point with that.
Yeah, I think
To spend those funds.
we're, well, you're never committed, but we're definitely,
Yeah, but-
we're encouraged
Yes.
as a community to make the
It's a
connection.
50% off deal.
Yes.
For the bike path through Bachman Park, that grant hasn't come through yet, has it?
That one is, yeah, but that's the one that's the longer process, it's the federal dollars administered through the state. The one that's come through, it's just a much, like Mike said, it's a much longer process
Yeah.
That,
to work through that.
that one's 80/20.
Yep.
80
Yeah.
federal, 20 local.
As far as the concerns regarding the safety for the splash pad, I don't see it as that big of a concern as far as parents will take their kids in the car to go to the park to go to the splash pad, because that's what they're currently doing. They go with their kids to some prairie or Deerfield. They go elsewhere than in our own community. So I think it's important that we have something that keeps our residents in Cottage Grove rather than going to other communities.
I don't disagree with that, but I just think that we also need to consider the size of that parking lot and whether or not there's another way to get there if you choose or chose to walk. And that might be through what's going to be happening on Clark Street, because that's going to be redone as far as the bike path. Maybe we need to consider some spots in there. And that would actually get a little bit wonky because we probably have to work with the railroad and everything, so that's a little more challenging. But I mean, that's another consideration too. But these things I think should be talked about along with any type of work that's going to be done on design.
I don't know if Sean has the parking data with him. He kind of looked at how many days would be, truly an issue down there. Fireman's Festival, some of the bigger rugby events. And I don't know if you know how many, did you come out to how many days that would be?
Fireman's Festival weekend, obviously, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I believe 3 other days that would possibly be an issue in June. Yeah. So a total of 6 days where we'd be competing, and we'd probably have to look at Fireman's Fest, just maybe shutting it down for that weekend as a whole, just because there's so much going on in that area.
And I agree, I think that younger kids, the parents, a parent would be with them, but what about the 10 to 15-year-olds that, they don't want to have mom and dad hang out with them, and they want to get independence, they're taking a busy road to get there.
One thing, just relative to age, specific use of spray pads, you start getting to that age group and they're less likely to use it, frankly. I mean, right now, the idea of this being kind of companion with your major playground is actually a really good dynamic and very kind of typical, because you're kind of catering to the same crowd and so that, the kids kind of reach that age, 10 and older, where the splash pad may be cool for a few minutes, but then it's kind of uncool maybe. but nonetheless, I'm just saying, so that does kind of maybe temper, or at least another aspect of, that concern.
You had a couple people that were interested in speaking. Jeremy Holiday?
Should we go first?
Yeah, if you want to come up here and stand at the podium, I think there's a mic up there. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Okay.
Good evening. I wanted to speak to you about the splash pad and support of it from two perspectives. The first of which is as a parent and consumer of the Bakken Park, and the second is as the president of Madison United Rugby. I started playing rugby in Bakken Park about 3 years ago, and I didn't know anything about the park. I found the park there. My kids were 7 and 3 at the time, both boys. I said, hey, let's go check it out. And since the first time we went, I mean, we go in the summertime once or twice a week to it. We call it the Castle Playground. Of all the dream parks in town, it's our favorite one. We play laser tag there. The things we like about it are it's surrounded by green. And my son has a scooter, like it's a little push scooter, so he likes the little bike path that's part of it. It's also generally a little bit less crowded most times, and we really like it. And in the summertime, we live near the Goodman Center. There's a splash pad there. There are probably like 5 or 6 places around that we decide between in the summertime. If there were a splash pad here, we'd probably be here twice a week in the summer. We like to go here. It's nice to be able to have an awesome playground and then have, I've seen some sketches or the rendering that Sean has of the place. It looks top notch. I'm not an expert in splash pads, but I have been to many. And the design that Sean showed seems great. So as like a parent who has kids who comes from out of town to go here, a splash pad would just mean that we're here more often. And it adds to all the cool stuff we can do there. That's item 2. As the president of Madison United Rugby, Sean and I started talking about the agreement between MUR and this building project, probably 6 months or so ago. I've gone back in my records and found mentions of discussions of something similar to this, 2 to 3 years in the past. And as we have gone in the process of trying to come to a resolution about the agreement, in December, after 6 months of work, our clubhouse committee came with a recommendation. We voted on that and passed it we set ourselves a $1.65 million building goal. We have 1.3 pledged. Part of that was a $50,000 earmark to give to the Parks and Rec Department to essentially do this project. As you know, we're currently negotiating exactly how much that number will be. Regardless of whether that number is higher or lower, our board decided that we wanted to give money to the project. It's advantageous for us for a number of reasons. One, it just seems like it's the next great step for this park. As we build a clubhouse and a garage in our space where we previously had a shed, it makes sense for the other places in the park to expand as well. When we have tournaments that use fields 3 and 4, the soccer fields over there, our amenities usually include a garbage can, 2 porta potties, and a lawn chair or 2. If there's a structure over there, they can have bathrooms, we can have video stuff over there, we can have a whole lot of more amenities in a little satellite location. If people are playing at field 3 and then playing at field 4, they don't have to come all the way back. It I think, would transform part of what we do there when we host big tournaments into something that expands into the larger park and makes it seem much more like a complex. And in places that I've played that are similar in Milwaukee and elsewhere, it expands the reach and the feel of the tournament itself all the way out to the bounds of the park. Secondly, in the original conception of the plan in 2008, our building, the clubhouse, which is not yet built, was conceived of as the central building for the park. There's going to be public bathrooms in there. It was going to sort of serve that function for the whole park. The vision of the park has evolved over time, and it makes a lot of sense to have bathrooms on our property and to have bathrooms out by fields 3 and 4, so that when soccer is out there or anyone else is out there just using fields 3 and 4, they have a place to go to the bathroom, they have a place to have a warming kitchen if they need it, and it makes sense for the way in which the use patterns that we have for the park. And for those reasons, when I presented to the board the idea of, there's things in the agreement, but we could, when I presented them the idea of having a shelter out there, it seemed like a great idea. It seemed like something that we would use and take advantage of, so it was a good investment for us. And it seemed like it was a good way for us to help the park grow. I mean, from the very beginning, we helped do a lot of the excavation, we helped cultivate this space and turn it into a destination, and that's something that we are still committed to. And that's the reason why I am in support of the splash pad as a person, and why we as the board of MU are also in support of it.
All right, Heidi Murphy? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Heidi Murphy. I worked with Sean and other members of the community on the splash pad design on the Friends of the Bakken Park group. So I just have a couple points that I prepared in support of the splash pad. First of all, it's a cross-generational community space. It's a place where parents and their kids and grandparents can gather together. It also provides accessibility for all types of abilities. So children that need assistance in mobility will be able to use the splash pad, and grandparents that are attending, watching their grandkids have fun outside in the summer will also be able to take part in the enjoyment. And they'll be able to park at the splash pad and get there on the bike path as well. It's also a safe water environment because there's very little standing water. So compared to maybe other options that have been explored in the past, this is, there's no standing water in a splash pad, so it's safe for all ages. It encourages interactions between both kids and adults. So kids will interact together, figuring out how to work the water features, how to make them, they change, because to reduce the usage, they'll flow at 80, 60 or 80% use at any given time, so it'll rotate between. There's one of the features that kids interact with to change the path of the water, so older kids will be able to help the younger children figure out how to make those things work. And also, because there's reduced supervision versus maybe a swimming pool, adults will be able to interact with each other and build those community bonds. So that brings me to kind of more broad goals of putting in a splash pad. It'll be a social and community building space that will expand really the foundation for a healthy and sustainable local economy. Because visitors, as you know, visitors will come to the park already, but may come more often, and they'll bring a demand for services and products provided by our local businesses, both the current ones and future restaurants, and we don't know what else will happen in the future. It'll provide another draw for businesses that might look to open in Cottage Grove because there will be another amenity for their employees who may be future residents of Cottage Grove that will be here in the community for them. So all in all, it'll create and draw visitors, improve the quality of life for residents already here in Cottage Grove, and continue to build a vibrant community here. So we should take the first step and support engineering for the splash pad.
Any other comments from the board?
I think the traffic issue, I'll bring to the Public Works Committee. And
What's that?
traffic issues around Clark Street and everything, trying to get there, maybe a different means if you want to actually walk to Bakken. JJ, we can bring that up, and Public Works started there. We're already going to be redesigning Clark Street anyway in the next couple of years. Maybe we can do some things on the engineering side to hopefully address that. So there's another option for folks. That would address one of my concerns.
Anybody else? And Matt, you said the engineering cost right now, we're looking at, is it 70,000?
70,000 is for the splash pad and for the shelter.
Okay. Okay, Sean, anything to add? I mean, I know you've had this issue up here a few times before, and I think you've done a really thorough job with it.
I think the most important thing, one of the most important things is you're not approving the splash pad with shelter, it's just really the engineering costs. This will come back to you as a board when we come to the budget cycle in August.
Anybody else? Melissa, did you have something?
I was just gonna make the motion to approve the $70,000 in engineering costs for the splash pad and shelter at Bakken Park.
Okay, I'll second it. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve the engineering cost. I guess not to exceed 70,000 at this point is kind of how we do that. Yep, okay. All right. For the splash pad and shelter at Bakken Park, any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, one. Motion passes. All right, 6B, list of ordinances to be amended. I know we discussed a couple things. John, you brought up the room tax ordinance last time.
Yes, so the CDA, we have CDA down here? We do, I think. I can either cover it there or cover it now, but.
Okay. And then, John, you might have been copied on this email. I got an email just today from somebody who's a dog owner regarding dog licensing.
Yep.
And I didn't print mine out. If you want to kind of give it just an overview.
I can read it. It's from a recent dog owner, just learned of the ordinances involving dogs in the village. He sent it to myself and Jack on the ordinance review committee, which I think I've brought up in the past that we haven't really met in the last couple of years. The individual goes on to say, I'm a firm supporter of having all dogs in the village registered, both for safety, to ensure vaccinations are up to date and they're spayed and neutered, and for the village's assistance if a dog becomes lost. Concern is the necessity of a fee associated with dog registration. If the goal of the village is to have every dog registered, a fee for that registration acts as a barrier to the goal. $15 fee is minimal to the median household salary of Cottage Grove. It's more about optics than financials. Correctly assumes that we don't have a significant portion of our budget tied to the dog licensing process. In the individual's opinion, and he has XX $ ticket for not registering a dog would be more suited to the goal of universal registration. Alternatively, if you want to ensure a new dog owner has enough financial stability to support a dog, then a much higher fee would be required. So he summarizes, believes that Cottage Grove should clarify their position on dog ownership within the village and alter the fee accordingly. Either support universal dog registration to ensure all dogs are vaccinated through zero registration fee and a ticket for unregistered dogs, or increase the registration fee to force dog ownership only to households that can afford it.
That, like I said, we just got that. I think it was today.
It came this morning, yeah. Yeah.
So I don't have the ordinance number, actually.
Is any portion of that fee go anywhere else?
Like to the county or?
To the county?
For dog
Yeah,
parks?
that's
Yeah. So it funds dog parks?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, if Matt or someone on staff could maybe pull, what I would recommend, like surrounding communities to see what they actually charge, and if you said a portion of it goes to the county, maybe we can get that portion, and it's probably in line, I'm guessing, and I'm assuming that most of us would agree that we don't want our police department acting as full-time dog catchers checking registrations. So maybe we're in line with everything that the board so choose, but that way we can just get back to the constituent that right,
Yeah, I just sent him an email that said, thank you for your email, and we're kind of looking at ordinances right now, so I'll get back to him with what we wanted to do with it. But we really haven't had that issue come up too much in the past.
What I'd like to ask you is, what is your direction with these two? Aaron and I are divvying up the drafting of the hotel room tax, which hasn't been visited for a while. But these are the two that have been mentioned. I haven't gotten anything from anybody up to this point, subject to this dog thing.
I have three more for you.
Okay.
So when we were discussing, so I'll cover the CDA one now, around hotels. So there was some very good discussion at CDA around that, including adding a portion there that's bringing us up to speed around tourism. Paul Severson was there at the CDA to cover kind of the chamber's perspective on that, and there was a lot of good discussion around that. So there was a number of changes in there that Lee now has that we're working through to adjust and get up to par, and hopefully in someday soon we'll have the opportunity to actually have a hotel in the community. But then we discovered that the clerk treasurer was referenced in the document, which is a position that hasn't existed for, 2 or 3 years now. So then, the nice thing about the codification of our ordinances, I searched for that and found 3 other ordinances that are referencing that title.
Clerk treasurer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So those maybe just be minor. One of them's around
It
police
should be
development.
village clerk then instead of clerk treasurer.
Depends on
just-
what the duty is.
Yeah.
Duty is, yeah.
Okay.
I think each of these examples, they were related to deposits or something of that sort, so it would be treasurer. So I'll circle back to that. Then there's a couple more from an economic perspective that the CDA will be taking a look at next after we get done with this hotel one. So those are,
Okay.
as far as that, our committee's doing.
Okay. Anybody have any?
I got something here. You know, based on Matt's memo last week about the school and the plans for the new school on Bus Road,
Yeah.
198-9 for impact fees. You know, we're going to have an issue at the intersection of Bus Road and Cottage Road that could be partially paid for by impact fees. I think that would be important. Now, if we choose not to annex that land, we could turn that into the town's problem of that. But Bus Road and Cottage Road is going to be a traffic. It's hard now to get down there at 2 in the afternoon, let alone to have a school down the street.
Annex which land? What, you said if we chose not to annex the land, which
School.
land?
Well, then it's in the town. So
You mean
the
the
town
school?
No, the town would have the school and the school would have to go to town.
How to provide the service.
So that, the school's portion isn't at that intersection, though.
What was that?
The school's land isn't at that intersection, though.
Then-
Bus Road and Cottage Grove Road.
It's currently
Further north?
Yeah.
to the north of that,
Yes.
kind of kitty corner, so it's not right at the corner, and you know what I mean?
But they are negotiating with, on that parcel.
I'm assuming that's the other land they're talking about.
But that's at the biglacial drumlin and their land, which is diagonal. It won't be that whole parcel of land.
Right,
either.
they don't want just the corner touching, they actually need some kind of access.
Right, so it still wouldn't be
Yeah.
that corner. for
I
the
mean, we could
intersection.
still provide services to the school. Doesn't mean it has to be in the village. And that turns Bus Road into a town road. It's not a village road.
Is Bus Road currently considered a town road then, right?
Yeah. it is. But how does that intersection work? Because that wouldn't be village at all. I mean, is that towns at that point anyway? Do you know? Bus Road and Cottage Grove Road? Because that's right across from Shady
The dentist
Grove.
office is village, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
so
next
Shady
to
Grove
it,
to the south would be.
Right.
but next to the dentist, to the
There's a
west
little- yeah.
is town.
Okay.
So again, it's an easy way to pay for this intersection, stoplight presumably is what's going to happen, but it's going to get a school road and highway on. And we're not that far away from it. They plan on building in 2020, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And then if they continue to put, you know, beyond that athletic fields and stuff, we're going to have traffic not only during the school times, but now,
Yeah.
you know, soccer and football, whatever else might be up there, so.
I think we could definitely look at an impact fee for that, that general area as a zone. SA has some experience with Sun Prairie with doing that, so that's an option. Also, we let the school know that when they come for approvals, there'll be a developer agreement. There could be a negotiation there as well for them to contribute towards a portion towards the traffic light, because, you know, they wouldn't be the only ones.
Don't they have to do his mic's still on? That would be you.
Or Mike. Let's make it personal.
Don't they have to do a traffic study as part of,
Yes,
yeah, of part of the previous developer agreement, right?
yes, they have to do a traffic impact analysis.
Yeah.
As part of the development of that parcel. If you have an impact fee, it could go out as far as the whole neighborhood, which would go
Yeah.
Yeah.
north, Gaston Road.
Yep.
So
And then there's also a plan to have, if there's development in the new TID 8 over there, that intersection is part of that project plan, so that could be another source of funding, so it could be kind of a, you know, multi-pronged financing approach of that.
So do we have to look at the ordinance again, or is it just a matter of?
I think you need ordinance to make the impact fees that.
It's in the impact fee now, or it's in the ordinance, right?
Our only impact fees right now are water and sewer, so we would
Oh,
need
we
to
would have
create, we would
traffic.
have to create a new one.
You gotta
Transportation.
create
Yeah.
something specific for traffic light, because we only have impact fees for water and sewer right now.
But we can have MSA bring, you know, that's another thing for
So you
public
can
works.
specifically earmark it for traffic.
Public Works for that, or?
Yeah. Yeah, I think MSA could bring a proposal.
And widening roads.
For impact.
Yeah.
Needs to be done there.
Yeah, and they've worked with us in the past on impact fees when we created the first two.
Okay.
Okay, so circling back a little bit, what is your direction to staff, myself or Aaron or whoever, in terms of these new ordinances?
Well, I think John made the point too, that ordinance committee really hasn't met, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering if maybe that should happen first, where we can sit down and kind of talk about how we need to go about reviewing any ordinance or revisiting.
Well,
And how much
could I
time
throw
we-
out something?
Sure.
The ordinance committee, I think most of the committees can take care of their own ordinances. I don't know, I'm not sure how valuable the ordinance committee is.
Right.
I was happy to attend all of the meetings, but, you know, I just wonder if that's something we ought to look at. And I mean, maybe talk to the board here and just say, do you want to activate the ordinance committee or not? And if you do, you know, fine. Or do you want to bring your ideas here to the whole board so that they hear, well, we want Lee working on this, we want Aaron working on that. So I think that we're just looking for some direction in terms of how you want to handle these things.
Do you have a rough estimate of the 4 ordinances or so that we've talked about in terms of legal time? I mean,
Well, most of them are pretty straightforward. I mean, if it's just a matter of changing clerk treasurer, even I can do that relatively simply. But, you know, I think as you start getting into an impact fee ordinance, I mean, that's a little more complicated. You know, I do think that there should be again, our biggest concern is just give us a process that you want to follow when it comes to these ordinances, because otherwise there's a tendency to, you know, suddenly we bring an ordinance, nobody thinks about it, and then as time goes on, that really starts to add up.
any thoughts on, I mean, I would say basically a draft ordinance that you think would solve the issues that we've raised, I guess. I mean, or address those issues, and then, I don't know how the maximum amount of time or not to exceed the amount of time you expense would be.
Well, and let me just throw one more thing into the pot, and that is, sometimes people will bring ordinances, and it's kind of like, well, okay, and that's great, I appreciate it and everything, but I think it sometimes takes more time than it's worth, because I'm not above, believe me, copying other people's ordinances. And I usually go to municipalities and I will talk to their attorney and say, well, okay, you have a dog license on in your ordinances. How long has it been there? How has it worked? And so that's just another, I mean, we try to keep it as inexpensive as possible. But we're happy to do whatever the board wants done. We just would like some direction on what to do.
It seems like the direction we've recently gone is it trickles back to committees make recommendation, it comes to the village, to
Yep.
us, the board, correct? I mean, that's kind of the trend of recent.
That's where we're at right now, I think.
Right, I mean, I don't want to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, but if it means activating the ordinance committee to say, here's these ordinances that people have brought up, I'm fine with at least having a meeting or two.
I think the idea with that was that most of the committees, if it's a topic that falls within Public Works, it makes most sense for the committee that deals with Public Works things to look at that ordinance versus the ordinance committee looking at it and then
Going back.
referring it to Public Works, and then
Right.
it just seems like additional steps. But we could do either.
I just have a question of who, like, so if there's an ordinance that we're concerned about, and we say, hey, let's look at this ordinance, do you then draft whatever, like,
Well,
who decides how to change it or what to change?
that's what we're trying to standardize, and that is, if you have an ordinance that you would like to see pursued, you bring it to the board, and you say to the board, well, I'd like to see an ordinance that deals with this. If the board agrees, then one of us gets direction to draft it. And again, most of these are ordinances that are also available from other municipalities to compare, but, you know, I mean, then we'll say, well, Deerfield does this, or Stoughton does that, what do you want to do?
So we could have you, between you and Aaron and Matt, draft proposed ordinances for the next board meeting or something regarding?
Well, we'd want to know
Yeah.
what you want,
Yeah.
Okay,
what you want us to cook
Give
up.
Some sort of direction.
Yeah.
okay, so you've got the room tax thing.
And that we're kind of working on in conjunction with
CDA.
CDA, yep.
So we've kind of got to wait for CDA.
It's already moving forward.
Okay.
We've had a good kick at it already.
Okay, and then Troy brought up the development,
Impact
fees, which
Transportation.
doesn't really need to go to a committee, I guess, unless you want to work with the plan commission.
Matt's
I would think public works.
Public works.
I mean, there's gonna be a cost to that. Because there has to be a study done that MSA would have to do, and maybe Baker Tilly as well.
Right, because we have to justify the impact fee.
Yeah.
So that would be, do we want to spend the money on the study to get the impact fee, which is fine, I mean, I don't.
Well, that's what we would bring a proposal, would go to Public Works would make a recommendation one way or another to
Okay.
the board.
Okay. And then I had the one about the protest petition thing, and I'm missing one.
The dog license?
Dog license, sorry. And I don't know how people feel about dog licenses. I don't want to create an issue for the chief expecting chase after dogs either. I don't think that's the answer, but I think that would be to research what other communities do.
Yeah.
And, you know, see if our fees in line, and as long as it supports dog parks, I think we're solving part of the problem.
Well, I'd like to know how much goes to other places too, before
So you
we
need like a
decide.
breakdown of what goes where?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can,
The fee break.
John or whoever got that email, can you send a copy of that to Matt, or?
I have that one if you want to.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned
It's
way.
yeah, I was gonna say, it's a new way to email right here.
Yeah. Real
Yes.
mail, not email.
That's
That was forwarded.
It's a leave in.
So then also, John Williams, you're gonna send those other.
These are
with
probably
just the,
minor,
like,
just,
the clerk treasurer thing.
yeah,
That makes sense.
they're not on the high priority, they just,
You just do a word search through the entire code and see where.
that's
where
how I
comes
did
up.
it, and that's how I
Yeah.
popped these three up.
Once you figure out how that search thing works, it actually is pretty good. It's just a little different, but. Okay.
But beyond what, going with what we were talking about, Matt, your suggestion was to keep it within the committees to check on ordinances, so are we doing that? I mean, is it just whenever it comes up, it just seems like we should probably make it somewhat of a priority to sit down and look at the ordinances we
Yeah.
have, because as the ever-changing
Yep.
life of Cottage Grove and moving into the future and stuff, we should have some sort of an idea.
And until the issue comes up that relates to that ordinance, you don't know you have an ordinance that's out of date or
Right.
has the wrong word or whatever.
So my point is, would it make sense then for the committee, for a committee to get back together and review all of them, or go through the committees? Lee's shaking his head.
Well,
As long as
it's
we
just
is
that
at every meeting.
Yeah.
Lee's lived through this before, and my thought is, what's usually happen, and again, I'll do whatever you say. Our thought has been, it ought to originate with the committees and with the staff, because they're the ones who actually use these ordinances. So JJ comes up with a grass ordinance, or his,
We had a tree one. Tree
well,
one.
he's a weed commissioner, and he, is always trying to get more power there, but, I think that if you start with staff, and staff then comes to the committee and says, well, here's some ordinances, or here's some things that I think we ought to try to change. And then I think that comes to the board. That's usually a more effective way, because what happens is you sit down and you say, okay, we're gonna go through the code, and we're gonna start at page 1. And I've actually had to do that, and it's relatively painful.
Tedious.
Yeah,
Worse than watching paint dry.
right.
John,
So, yeah, I sat on the ordinance review committee as a citizen member. for probably 2 to 3 years, and that was the sole focus of that committee. So if these ordinances actually came up, rather than kick it back to a subcommittee, and I get it, we don't want to be, doubly over redundant, but that was their sole focus. And, what I would recommend is, get this ordinance review committee up and running again, because I did find value in it. We haven't met since, I think I'm, a board member that's assigned to that committee. But then having the discussion, if you have 2 or more trustees on that committee,
Right.
they know the discussion of the board. I don't think we need to set monthly meetings. It's as needed. And I also recommend, I enjoy meeting with Lee, but I don't necessarily, I understand his legal expertise, but you have, I think it consists of 5 people that are involved citizens. We have the internet, and, if we want staff to review similar communities' ordinances, I don't think, I personally didn't find it was worth Lee's time, as an attorney, and the village paying for his time to attend. So I would recommend getting the ordinance review committee up and running. They can draft the language and then get it to Lee, and then Lee's works making sure it's all legal on the back end, but I don't necessarily think that he needs to attend all those meetings either.
And Lee didn't want to attend all those meetings and offered not to attend those meetings,
So-
But I just, just again, just so we can kind of work it out in terms of, as long as they get to me, that's fine. Just understand that, at some point, they got to be reviewed, and sometimes we can short circuit the cost.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Maybe at this point, just schedule one ordinance review meeting and see where it goes.
my suggestion, first action, then, if the committee's getting back together, would be to kind of ferret out some sort of decision tree or whatever on priorities of ordinances. So for me, economic would be a pretty high one, safety, certainly very high, anything like that where it would kind of move up the chain of those ordinances that need to get taken care of. Maybe do that first, and then you guys can, whoever's on the committee can start diving in to watching paint dry.
Right.
Well, another issue is finding people who want to be on the committee.
Yeah.
Not board people, but finding citizens who will actually attend and, be active members, and that too sometimes gets a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging.
Lisa, would we need to appoint people? Because I don't think,
The website lists, I
Yeah,
think
we
4 or
we
5
have
people
it
on there.
listed.
okay.
That's how they got,
Have to
I'm guessing
contact
how this
people
guy
and
got
see if they can
my
attend the
contact.
meeting
Just ask them if they're still interested.
That's
Yeah.
first step, I guess, yeah. Send an email to the citizen members, and, they can send it to Matt, and they can get it to us, so we'll schedule a meeting. Good. Okay. All right, anything else on that? And go down to discuss and consider neighborhood meeting hearing format regarding Shady Grove. There's a attachment in your packet, and I think Aaron put that, Matt put that together, I guess, but some basic questions at the bottom there, like the bullet points: format of the meeting, who runs or moderates the meeting, how long do people get to speak, how do you set up the room, and what is staff's role?
Mainly just trying to think through, okay, we have this meeting, it's gonna start in 1 minute from now. What's gonna happen when we're here?
What I'd
Who do you
like to
want here? How do you want the room set up? All that kind of stuff.
Well, I can't speak to the room setup, but I was just going to speak to the format. I think it would be nice to, rather than having it kind of the shotgun approach where we're dealing with everything at once, let's get an agenda of the controversial topics and allow people to speak just on that topic. Then they can come up and speak again, but limit the time to 2 minutes or something on each bullet point. But if we can have a list of those things that we have heard over and over complaints about, whether it's the routing of Bus Road or the multifamily housing, whatever the refrain is that we've heard over and over again, those complaints, and then deal with those individually, and then just try to get a consensus. And, you know, I think that the town board should be there, village board, and ideally, you know, the planning, you know, I don't know, I mean, as many people as we can get, but just have that process where we're going point by point, rather than the meetings that we've had in the past where everybody just lists off the litany over and over and over again.
I mean, there's some things I don't know how we're gonna get to a consensus on. I mean,
No, we're not gonna get
like
consensus.
Parks and density and things like that.
How does the neighborhood meeting usually work?
Normally it's a developer runs it. It's a,
Yeah.
yeah, it's normally just a developer meeting with
Yeah.
whoever wants to meet with them.
And we post a notice of possible quorum if we happen to show up, but we don't really run the meeting. They kind of do it themselves, which is probably what the intent is here, I would think.
I didn't know that, okay.
Yeah.
You may want, in this one, we may want to have a facilitator or something like that.
And I would actually offer up to facilitate the meeting. I've had formal training in the military and facilitated numerous meetings, and if the board would accept that offer, I could have something prepared
I'll make a motion
by
to
the
make
4th.
John the facilitator.
And kind of give you an overview of how I would see this running.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
second it. I'm fine with it.
Well, I don't know if it's the best
Wait.
choice to have a village board member.
Okay, there's
'cause
a,
we're gonna
there's a
be
motion on
voting
the floor, I think, was it seconded?
Yeah, Jack
it is.
did.
Okay,
Jack did.
so, what, say what we're gonna do with that.
Okay. I mean,
Can't we have discussion?
yeah, we can have a motion in a second, so we'll have discussion
Okay.
on the motion.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have some concerns about a village board member being the facilitator.
Well, we're the ones making the decisions. Who else is gonna, because the township really isn't gonna be making those decisions, right? Who else would be
Right.
the facilitator?
Well, that's just it. We're supposed to be voting on it, and this is more of an informal meeting. We've heard their opinions
Right.
already about the issues, so I thought this neighborhood meeting was to help give them another voice
Right.
to, again, state
And
their
get the
opinions.
developer and the community together,
Right.
so that they, because we're not gonna get everybody on board. I
Right.
mean, there's gonna be those
Yes.
people that are just, we're not gonna convince those
Right.
certain people just because they don't want it. But I've talked to several people that, even people that have spoken at the meeting, and they say, yeah, we know it's gonna get developed.
Yep.
Okay, so they acknowledge that. I think there are probably a couple that just don't want to ever see it developed. Most people do say it's gonna get developed, right? But those are the people that we want at the table and to be heard. And I would just prefer it more systematic and organized than
Right.
free form, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't think a board member is the best option.
What would you suggest?
I don't know, but that, I mean, yes, they do need a facilitator. However, it's not really our meeting.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we let the developer just run it, will we get a better outcome, is the question. You know, if we let them do it, I don't know.
Well, I think we have to at least ask the developer
Okay.
for input.
Maybe they have
I'm
an
okay with that.
independent
In
facilitator. I
full
don't know.
disclosure, I mean, I've met with the developer's attorney on 2 different occasions, because I voted against the final plat on the planning commission, and asked what my concerns were, and I explained, and so I thought that there was some common ground established between me and the developer's attorney. I've met with numerous, I mean, you guys got all the emails as well, phone
Yeah.
calls.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them, feel comfortable talking to me, and I'm with you, that they agree that it's gonna happen. They just wanna
Yeah.
make sure it's done in the right way, as I'm assuming all of the 7 of us
I mean,
do as well.
wasn't the direction out of the zone discussion really is to have this meeting where the issue would be kind of tried to at least iron out, at least the
Mhm.
top,
Yeah.
That's what
the
I'm.
top
that's my goal.
concerns,
Yeah.
get those addressed. Everybody agrees that at least, I'm not gonna get everything that I want. but I'm
Nobody's
gonna
gonna get everything, yeah.
these 2 things out of, I thought that's what we were, the intent of what the developer agreed to and what the board agreed
Yeah,
to.
my understanding it was about as informal as possible. I mean, to make everybody comfortable talking.
But you do
Yeah.
want some structure where it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's either, yes, we're gonna move forward with this plan or this modified plan, or no, we're not.
Right.
And to get there, I mean, there's steps and, you know, you're spot on. What are the 5 top? Because, I mean, okay, pressure on the school is no longer an issue because they passed a referendum. You know, what are the top 5? And each topic, you know, you come to some consensus at the end of it.
Right.
Yeah. John, I think that you've got to bring this back either to plan or the board to take formal action. I don't think that the informal group has the authority to do
No,
that.
nope.
No.
No.
So
I agree, but, I mean,
No,
they
we're
can
just
have the
making the
notes.
framework that then we can, we
Yes.
No,
can all
pass on
vote
the
on
plan
it
commission and
not
bring back
get
here to
shut
the board.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing is it provides the developer with direction.
Yep.
Yep.
Staff, the
Yeah.
developer, I mean, you know, the community as a whole, and it kind of keeps us moving the ball along because it's been at a stalemate for the last year and a half as to what we're gonna do here.
Yeah, we want it to be a good development, you know, so that's the objective.
Okay. I mean, the format of the meeting is kind of the way you run a public hearing. If the developer wants to make a presentation and then invite public input, that's the whole purpose of it. If they're comfortable facilitating it or not. I mean, I'm assuming they would be, but I guess we have to ask.
There's a motion and a second, and I
Yeah.
mean, just to kind of keep this moving along, but I mean, the developer, let's just call it what it is, I mean, it's probably the enemy of the 40 people that always vote
Right.
Hopefully not at
no.
the end of the
And
meeting.
whereas, I mean, like I said, these people feel comfortable enough to call me, email me, I've met for coffee with them,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of the neutral party that at the end of the day, you know, we have this land, you know, it's annexed into the village, a developer wants to put houses in here, we need houses for the economy out here, you know, to provide workforce, so let's just keep it moving, and I mean, you can call some of the town people that, you know, have spoken and see if they would agree to that, you know, if they're, I just think having the developer doing it is
But-
not the most
Yeah,
productive.
can I modify my motion that you would be the moderator of this with the understanding that the developer accepts that? So,
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll accept that if you want to work out the format of the meeting with the developer and just let us know what it's going to be. And
But see, that's the thing, you're not supposed to be a neutral party. You're a village trustee. So I don't understand how you can be the go-between between mostly town
Another
people
municipality.
and a developer who's come to the village.
So offer a different solution, but we have a motion,
Yeah,
second.
I mean, I think this has progressed to the point where normally you wouldn't have a village board member facilitating, but in this case, I think you're kind of at that point already. Otherwise, you backtrack.
yeah, I still think it's a decent option to try to give structure. I understand informal, but let's make some decisions.
Okay. Well, we got a motion and a second, I guess, to have John do it with you meeting with the developer to kind of work out the format ahead of time.
Sure.
And then let us know, I guess, what it's going to be, or send us an email or something. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I,
Two. Okay, motion passes.
If I can, one other subject, the meeting date doesn't work for a couple of us.
It's February 6th.
It's February 6th, Wednesday.
Okay.
You have a meeting, I have a
Oh,
meeting.
yeah,
that day.
yeah.
Okay.
It'd be nice if we could have a meeting where everybody that
Yeah.
would like to come, could come, as far as on the board.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
lots of
okay.
lines. Yeah.
Aaron, or Matic, was that meeting scheduled by the developer, or is that just?
This room was open the 5th, 6th, or 7th. The developer was okay with any of those. I think I picked Wednesday just because the plan commission has been on Wednesdays.
Oh,
and
so we
we've
could do
gotten
the
a call
7th.
for those, but
What was that?
So we could do the 7th. He said room's also open on the 7th, the day after.
and that's emergency government.
That's emergency government. Okay.
Emergency government, okay. So,
It's the 5th is.
we'll ask them for new dates, I guess, right?
Well,
So
but this
can we
was
just-
to get it done
Yeah,
sooner,
I think-
I'd rather, so it
I
doesn't.
propose we
just-
leave it at, and if you're committed to wanting to be here for it, you're here for it. That's the way I look at it.
February 6th, though? Okay.
Do
Is
that
that-
February 6th? Okay. All right, All right, so February 6th, 6:30 here, and we'll go with that, and let us know what you find out from the developer, John. Okay? All right, moving down. Discuss and consider new operator's license for July 2018, June 2019 for Timothy Shippey. Looking at the report, it said that Sergeant Torres, I believe, looked into it, and this individual's okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to approve?
Why, I guess I just had a question of why he didn't bring that stuff up on his application. Do we know why?
I mean, why he said he wasn't charged with disorderly conduct and he was, or?
Yeah.
LWI, yeah.
I mean, the DC, I mean, that was 2003, but,
Yeah, it's a long time ago, but
I mean, 2010
memory
is-
shouldn't be that short,
yeah.
really.
So, I mean, that's a little
I mean,
concerning.
I think the applications are pretty clear as far as what they ask these people.
Right.
You know, it's not like rocket science. I mean, all we got is what we have from the sergeant regarding the recommendation, really. It's on the application. Kind of the standard that we've been using, alcohol-related offenses within the last year is what we kind of
Right.
turn back on.
But I'm glad that we have the chief look into this. Otherwise, I mean, anybody can just say no to everything.
Right, I mean, the other option is we've done it in the past where we have the applicant to come to the meeting.
Right.
Well, I don't know, given the fact that it's 2010,
Right, it's a long time ago, but I just don't like that they didn't put it on there.
Yeah.
I mean, seems,
Well, it says he is charged with disorderly conduct in 03, it doesn't say he was convicted.
well, different boards have been strict or lenient. So if you want to let him know that you have a question about this, then we'll have Lisa get in touch with him. And
was this his first application?
Yes.
Did he just start?
Does the ordinance say that it has to be at least 12 months after?
well, the ordinance doesn't say it, actually, the ordinance, there's a set of guidelines that the ordinance incorporates. So, I mean, he meets our guidelines.
Yeah, but it is,
Um,
tells us that he didn't. Yeah.
Well, does he live in the area? Do you know? Does anybody know? Does he live? I mean, it has the address, but it's crossed out.
Right, I don't believe, if I recall correctly, but I don't hold me 100%.
So at this point, why don't we just reject his application? That person, the individual can reapply, and then he needs to come in and explain the situation. He's lied on his application.
Well, did he? I mean,
Yeah, have you ever been arrested,
Arrested.
convicted, or are you currently charged?
Right, he put no
And
in
he-
the answer is yes.
and he was charged.
He
For
was charged
DC.
with- Yeah, even if he wasn't convicted.
But the OWI, he
Currently
was
charged.
convicted.
I would
Right.
say currently charged means the current thing.
If you've ever been
So he
arrested.
was
though.
charged,
Convicted, not arrested.
We're also talking disorderly
Yeah,
conduct.
arrested.
There's state criminal charge of disorderly conduct, or there's an ordinance violation, which is just a ticket. So it could have been either one of those. I'm assuming it was an ordinance violation, because it would have shown up as a criminal record.
Right.
And he was 18 or 19 when it happened 15 years ago.
Could have been as simple as a noise complaint or something.
Yeah, disorderly conduct, very wide ranging,
It's quite a coverall.
yes. But generally, if it's that long ago, we don't say denied, because people sometimes forget about these things.
I move to deny his application.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second to deny the application.
Troy, during discussion here, what we usually have done, if we do have questions, is to say to a person, there's been a motion to deny. you have the opportunity to come and talk to the board, and then the board can take final action. Because then they, if you deny it, then they have to go through the process again. And if that's your intent, that's fine.
That process again, now, do they have to wait a year to apply, or can they, when you say go through the process again, what do you mean?
Well, they have to, I know they have to pay a new fee, and I don't, do they have to wait a year? I don't think so.
believe they have to wait a year, but they have to
So-
pay another fee.
What is the fee?
And I see what you're saying, Leah, and I appreciate that, but I also feel like they weren't totally honest in their application versus someone that is honest and says, yes, I have, so.
Yep. And as I say, different boards have been more lenient or more strict, and so it's good for staff to know how you guys feel about it.
I mean, they can certainly reapply and go through the process again, but at that point, I would encourage him to be honest in the application and come in and explain it to us.
Well, I'd just like him to come back next time and explain why.
Does the applicant know that we found this in his background, or does he
No, at
not?
this point.
Okay.
No.
He will if he listens.
Well, you got a
to
motion
it.
on the floor to deny.
Yep.
And a second.
So does that mean, so how do you get it so that he comes back in 2
Well,
weeks? Would it
you'd
just
have
be the
to
table?
defeat that motion, and then you'd have to have a motion to table with a direction for him to come back.
I unsecond myself.
Well, let's just vote on you got a motion on the floor with a second.
Yep, motion and second.
So if you don't want to do that, vote no. If you do want to do that, vote yes.
Right. So the motion and the second to deny is basically without prejudice, is flat denial, right?
Yep.
Right.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, now you got a time for a new motion.
Yep.
Motion to table till next week, so he comes back. Or
And
if he comes here, then at that time, we can decide.
Oh,
Then I'll second that with the request of the individual to show in person.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And no-show means denial at that point.
right.
Okay. All right, so motion and second to have the individual come back to the next board meeting with the understanding that he's to explain this and that no-show means no license. Okay, motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. There we go. Now we're down to 2018 annual building permit report, and I guess that would be you, Tom? There you are, okay. Everybody got that in their packet?
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Tom Deacon. I'm the building inspector for the Village of Cottage Grove. At the end of each year, I come down to explain to the board and to introduce myself to the new staff and new board members, and give a yearly count of the permits and the activity that happened in the village for the past year. Any questions? And then, of course, we have everything, the entire breakdown in your packet.
Any questions for Tom on?
Just a couple. So it looks like we gave out more building permits in 2018 than 2017. Is that correct? Is that, or like, does that mean anything? I mean, is this that more people are renovating, or what is?
What we're seeing is obviously less residential lots in the village, and we're seeing more activity as far as people deciding not to move and upgrade or do whatever. Instead, they are at the point where they fix their kitchens, they fix their bathrooms, they put a rec room in, some put a pool in, redesign their decks and so on and so forth. There's a lot of activity like that in the village. And in the past few years, we've seen that grow and grow and grow. So people just like to stay in the neighborhood they're in, and everybody likes to upgrade after a few years.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? I appreciate the breakdown, I mean, that's all good, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we are down to reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. First, we have public works and properties.
All right, get down to that pile. So we still have the old business of the bike paths. We talked about the construction of the bike path on Highway N. We do have a county grant for that. And I think it's just a matter of progressing with that. Mike's not here anymore, he's disappeared.
Yeah,
Anything?
some.
Okay.
JJ, anything else on that? I mean, it's slated for this year.
Board, nothing's changed since the last time, just kind of waiting for the official paperwork from the county.
Yeah.
Which is February or mid-March, is what I was told. And relatively straightforward, just extend that path north.
And that's going to be really nice when and if Quarry Ridge is done, and certainly for any of the kids coming from that side of town, because there is a significant gap in the sidewalk for them to get down through here. So it's going to be nice, and it'll eventually connect up through to McCarthy Park, up that way past our development and everything, in the park, the county park up there. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why we were granted that grant, and that's very encouraging. So
Yeah, in 2020 in McCarthy Park, they're gonna put in a shelter and bathrooms there too, which isn't currently, so they're designing it this year.
they got a nice sled hill down there, I know that. Kids.
All right.
And then we talked about kind of a wrap-up of Conservancy Court. We're just essentially, that's wetland scrape. We're waiting for spring to come like everybody else to see what actually comes up, to make sure we don't have to dip into what we've held back from reserves from that particular contractor. I think it's going to be a dramatic improvement, albeit though there is a lot of water running through there. I've been through there several times now since the scrape. It's still a full-fledged creek/river sometimes. So there is the issue of the other side of that road that JJ and company will probably be looking at to kind of clear out in front of that grate where it comes through. So there's been some sediment. What's happened on the other side has come through. So there does need to be a little bit of work by us, the village, to get that done, but it's not impacting those citizens right now. We talked about the repaving of Highway BB. That's from, kind of in front of Ace there, all the way down to South Grange, Oak Street. Or no, further, Sandpiper. Sandpiper, sorry. All the way down to Sandpiper. Kicked around the idea of actually painting a bike lane on that section. And the committee approved or gave the nod for that, at least looking into that. It's not a significant cost. JJ's done some initial measurements and such for that. It would slow down traffic and certainly give other options for bikers along that particular street. And since we're redoing it, that's a great time to sort that out.
Is it being widened, or is it just?
No, it's being just repaired.
Redone.
Underneath it's.
So is that wide enough for?
It is, and that's where we just kind of, this was the first time we just talked about it, but we currently have, for the majority of that stretch, 12-foot, or we get 12-foot travel lanes, which for 25 miles an hour is way more than we need.
Yep.
Oh.
So we can shorten it up, and basically curb to curb changes a little bit, but Mike seemed to think we had plenty of room the best practice bike lanes and a little bit tighter lanes, but like I said, that generally discourages people from speeding at 25 an hour or so. Once, move forward a little bit, MSA will probably walk it with us and actually draw up some kind of a plan and sketch and just make sure it's, but it seems like it's possible.
And the other part of that, to kind of extend that bike lane, was to connect up to the existing path that's actually in front of cemetery, up in front of the Lutheran church there, and then it transitions to a traditional sidewalk. We thought about bringing that all the way down to in front of Southing Range, so that we transition from at that point onto that path and then go from there. We'd have all the equipment there. The cost would be minimal on the overall project, so it would be a benefit to, again, bikers and pedestrians. So that we did talk about that as well. So that would be the transition point for bikers. So the lanes would not go beyond that. Not a lot on engineering and director's report. I think we covered all those. JJ's team has been busy with the last snowstorm. And is there anything else you want to add to that? Or?
Well, I'm good with snow.
Yeah. We get another round tomorrow.
Get some sleep tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, you know me, I'm gonna express how great Pure Court is. So it is a good thing for our community. This last meeting, we were able to meet with Sierra Grobe, G-R-O-B-E. She is the new director that they brought in now for the one who had left, and she comes with a background of focusing mainly on youth in the court system. So she's really, really good at being able to have a whole list of resources for families that are going through some issues, that have a younger person that has kind of caused some problems and go through the peer court system. So it's not just like, okay, here you go, here's the court system, here's what we're doing, here's what peer court's all about, but here's some resources to go beyond.
Okay.
So she pointed all that out, and it was really neat meeting her. Jay also pointed out that she's been a great addition just because of the knowledge of all those community-based resources that are available out there in that program. So Briar Patch really feels really good about this. She also has a big focus on restorative justice, and since that's kind of the new focus in our justice system, is to try to figure out restorative justice instead of just a slap on the hand. She's being able to do what they call a school justice partnership, and wanting to launch that so that the schools can get involved, and like maybe working with like Jess, who's our resource center, our resource officer here, and the other resource officers in the area, and how to bring that into school so there's a knowledge of that. So overall, the cases are up that are being referred to Pure Court. Jay did point out that in 2018 they had received 40 cases, which 36 were seen. In 2017 there were 40 cases, 36 seen. 2018 we saw a 50% or a jump to 64 cases and 57 people seen. So that's a 50% increase in 1 year. So it's showing that it's working.
Jay's still involved, right?
Jay is very much still involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's not replacing him?
No.
Okay.
She's just no. So the next meeting will be the 19th of March, if you guys want to comment, 5:15.
All right, since we have discussion and consider items on 8.3 and 8.4, if there's no objection, I'd like to jump ahead to 8.5. I hear Grove because I see our new chief's currently patiently waiting back there.
If I can, I'd like to introduce our new EMS chief, Eric Lang, who's kind of come to the meeting this evening. Give us that 20-30-minute speech that you've got for us.
I planned for an hour and a half, so you're awesome. As you can see, it's just came to say hello, meet all of you, say thank you for helping with your representative to choose me for the position of chief. I can say you have a thorough police chief in that I stressed for a full month over my background check. Because he was very thorough. So we hope to do good things within the communities we serve, and hope to come back and have nothing but good things to report to you guys all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had met, what was it, last week, Thursday. A couple things, unaudited 2018 budget. It looks like we were made 76,600 versus a loss of 122,400 last year. 2018 was a record year with that 1,152 calls versus 1,002 in 2017. 99 calls for the month versus 93. For the quarter, the village had the highest percentage, 44.5%. Town of Cottage Grove, 13%. Town of Deerfield was 12%. Village of Deerfield was 9%. Pleasant Springs was close to 9%, and it drops off significantly from there.
Okay.
The Town of Pleasant Springs contract has been signed, and that's taken care of. There's a few minor changes going on to the employee handbook, which has gone to the attorney, and there's some discussion about working with Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute on a grant to fund EMS visitor program. It would reimburse up to $5,000. It really helps to identify individuals in the community who demonstrate concerns for early signs of dementia. And February 21st in Deerfield was our next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
John?
Yep, good.
Okay.
I'm going to change my name to John.
I'm going to grow a beard.
All right, back up to Utility Commission.
So Utility Commission met on January 9th. We had to discuss and consider, and we'll have a presentation. I can help JJ with that. 2 requests from the village, TID 5 funds for water tower lighting, the water tower out by the interstate, not to exceed $15,000. There's an average of 40,000 vehicles per day that drive up and down the interstate, and it's really going to be lit coming from the Milwaukee area, from the east, heading west, because, you know, just with the trees and whatnot, most of the Madison traffic probably knows where Cottage Grove is. Next item, we had to discuss and consider for a resolution to forego payment of advance to TID 6 in the amount of $86,000. And the Utility Commission tabled that. We requested Deb to reach out to our auditor for Baker Tilly for some more information, just to ensure that it's not going to affect the rate moving forward. Some of the questions was, how does it affect the balance sheet for the next 5 years? There was a raise of 18% last year, and there was adjustment in previous years due to an auditing error. So we just want to ensure, get something in writing that it's not going to impact the utility fees moving forward. Anything else to cover for utilities, or you want to go right into the lighting presentation?
I think, yep. I think that was about it.
Okay.
And John covered most of it, actually. The memo's in the packet. Essentially, Utility Chair Charlie Rogers brought this up almost about this time last year. It's kind of a pet project, and I did not have this stuff for the packet, but I got really good handouts. These are the tower that he sees a lot, and he had those pictures. We could probably get some, get a little better ones. And actually, I got a response this morning from the utility manager in Jefferson. That's actually been lit, he believes, since the late 70s. And essentially, I asked if he knew the reasoning. And he said he did not know the specifics, but he's sure it was to promote the city, basically. Their utilities did pay for it and pays for the maintenance of it. And I just asked if he knows of any other sites where they have any lit. He's not positive, but he thought maybe Oshkosh had something or another one up in the Appleton area. So I can do a little more digging and see if we can find some other examples of good ones.
So there's not a lot of
No.
communities that have lit water towers?
No. But I think, and just since I got this good question, I've given it a little more thought of why maybe they aren't.
I think a lot of communities don't have one right in such a visible location either. Just because, you site a water tower for your water system, and where is it going to be up and provide your pressure, your storage? Secondary thoughts are, can people see this?
We're lucky enough to have a
We just had-
billboard.
Yep. So,
This is strictly the water tower by the interstate.
yeah, yeah.
How do the neighbors feel if their whole backyard's there?
Well, and that's where we've, again, without having discussions, we talked to the one neighbor, would be the only one it would probably affect, but then the lighting experts that our utility chair has spoken with basically say these LEDs can be directed so much that there will be no spillage.
There's that one house, it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Be able to get a tan.
I'm thinking that's the reasoning why they provided him right away with the proposal for a tower, was you don't aim up at it, because then you can miss. You basically put this tower up and point it right at Cottage Grove.
The TID will pay for it, the initial cost, but what is it annually to run it?
Annually, now forgive me, I don't have it off the top of my head, it won't be much because they're LEDs, so they should last a long time, and they're not going to draw a lot of power.
Okay.
We can get some actual calculations. I don't think they've provided an estimate on that yet, but, or if they provided it, but I don't know what it translates to, I guess, in a line bill.
Okay.
I don't know what that draw means. but-
Probably a dumb question, but most of that maintenance stuff is just gonna be ground level anyways, right? You're not talking about having to get on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing 10, 15 years maybe to change a lamp at some point with the LEDs, but even that, we may or may not be able to reach it with our bucket truck. And I guess.
So they are
exact
up
loc-
there.
Mhm. Yeah, the actual lights, yeah.
So this tower right here that you've got up, JJ, is probably not a great example then, because it's lit up from the bottom, it looks like.
Yep, and that's how they did it back in the
Back in the-
70s.
yeah.
And I'm assuming their manager there, I'd never actually seen this one. He told me where it was, so I'm hoping at some point, depending on what happens here, to get by there and see. But yeah, that's how the ones that have been done
Yeah,
previous decades.
I've seen this one before.
But I'm guessing there's not a lot of homes right around it.
Yeah, that's usually what the issue is there's homes around these things, so they don't light them up.
Any other comments or questions?
Any feedback from the Chamber of Commerce and their thoughts? I don't know if they've- I assume they'd be all
They're in
for it.
favor of it.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything formally, but just the discussions I've had with some chamber members, they seem happy and pleased that we're considering this.
Okay. I figured that would be the case.
Okay.
How much, I don't know if you get this cost easily, but just the cost to get a solar panel just to offset that, since we get the money upfront doesn't cost us anything. I just did some quick calculations based on, it looks like it's 500 watts times 2 times the number of hours. Probably would have only a few $100s of electric over the course of a year is my rough estimate. But if a solar, obviously, we increase the cost of this, the TID is paying for it. The village is going to have to pay those electric bills the whole time. So if we're able to do it solar economically,
Yep.
not spending a lot of money.
I think the trick may be siting it just because basically that tower is surrounded by woods, but we can get some kind of a panel.
Yeah, on the
Up
top,
on-
yeah, it would have to go on the top,
Absolutely.
right, yeah. Just if it makes sense, if not, drop it.
It's a good recommendation.
Cost too.
I can ask.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're not cheap,
No, but
How long do they last? Yeah, are they 10 years?
I mean, that's what they're saying. LEDs are still new.
Yeah.
That,
Right.
we don't know, I guess we don't quite know yet.
Right.
They're supposed to last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the up to $15,000 from TID 5 to be utilized for lighting the water tower.
Second that.
Motion and a second to approve up to $15,000 from TID 5 funds to be utilized for lighting the water tower. Any other discussion?
If I can ask, I assume that we're gonna consult with the neighbors and the town, because technically it's, the neighbors are in the town. Yep.
You can make sure.
Yep, no,
Yep.
I think we wanted to, this is
As
really
well
the
as
first.
the- as well as the
It's just
airport.
strictly
Yep.
for an exploratory.
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're not committing
Actually,
to
better
Right.
see it.
Okay.
yeah, definitely check it. Josh,
Any other
There's a lot of
discussion?
pushback, just drop it.
If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Probably not.
Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Community Development Authority, discuss and consider Gray Wolf Partners' proposal to provide master planning services for Northlands area in TID 10. There are about 4, I believe, attachments in your packet.
Yeah, so this, the already talked about this. Lee was in attendance, so we kind of get the straight from the horse's mouth. Me being the horse, as well as some other ones. So we had a good discussion on there. I think there were some minor tweaks from Lee's draft that he was going to do, and then there was some wording from one of the committee members about insurance and maybe some.
Haven't actually heard back from you, no, so, no. But I'll follow up on that. We have received a response from Gray Wolf's attorney, and this is the same person I worked with when Gray Wolf walked the Dorsey building. And so my anticipation is that we'll have the language worked out by the end of the week. The CDA gave us broad discretion in terms of working the language out, and I'd ask for the same from the board. If there was a significant change from the language, I'd bring it back to both CDA and the board.
So the only thing with this is if Gray Wolf were to leave, this is something that we own as a village, the plan itself. So we'll need to do this whether they're involved or not. And certainly they've done a number of developments and their expertise in this, and they're going to bring in experts that they know in order to kind of coordinate all this. And this is everything from where to lay streets out to where pond retention should be, how you run, we need to run our lines for support of that area. So it's going to have to be done. It's part of the plan to kind of get it ready in the mode of kind of shovel ready. So it's something that I think partnering with them is actually beneficial for the village. But they own a number of the acres out there already, plus they've got an agreement, I think, with another large owner too as well. So they've kind of got it all choreographed already anyway from that perspective as far as development. So this is just a matter of kind of laying out a plan for that area. And I'll make a motion to approve proposal for master planning services, giving staff direction to continue moving forward with that. I think the overall price on this is $25,000, up to $25,000. That would be borne out of the actual TID right now.
I'll second that.
Okay. A motion and a second then to approve Gray Wolf Partners' proposal to provide master planning services for Northlands area in TID 10. And any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passed. Down to reports from village officers. Troy?
No reporting, sir.
Okay. James?
No report.
Jeff?
I have no report.
All right, Melissa?
Nothing.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to publicly thank JJ and the crew, if you want to pass that along for the snow removal, and it'll be round 1, I think tomorrow's round 2. And then I don't know if someone's going to be reporting if we have confirmation of the joint meeting with the town here next week, if there's an agenda or.
We have a meeting on the 31st, I believe, this time.
Was it
Thursday, I think? Yeah. Yep.
I'll pass along the draft as here, so.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, there it is.
End of last week.
Yep. Okay. Anything else, John?
Nope.
Okay. John Williams?
John, second. The only thing I have is, it looks like Summit is going to have their ribbon cutting on March 4th. I don't know the time yet, but that was mentioned by Paula Severson when we were at CDA earlier this week, or last week, I should say. So at least mark your calendars for that. That's going to be really, really cool for
Okay.
the community.
Sounds good. I have nothing. Lee?
Well, yes, I was asked to provide you with some information on forums, and instead of pretending that I had written something new, I made a copy of what I passed out in June on the open meetings law. So I'd like you to take a look at that. Primarily, the issue at that point was whether we had to do notices, for things like the festival or the chamber dinner and those kinds of things. So I addressed a lot of those issues in here. If I'd just like you to take a look at that and see if there are more issues that you would like covered. You can put all sorts of time into that, but I just thought that we'd already looked at that this year, and hopefully that would be sufficient. But if you would like more, let me know, or let the board know, and then I'll look for direction.
Does it include information like about negative forums, talking forums?
No.
That was
No.
what I was wanting more information on, I guess. Although this is a good reminder about open meetings. It seems like a long time ago.
It does. One thing that I would be happy to do, I see Alex is here, and I know that he has several of these. But each year I run off a copy of the Attorney General, State Attorney General's open meeting law and open records law. And each year comes in a different color so that you can keep them apart. But that's a real crash course in the open meetings law and the open records law. And I'll make sure that I get those out to you at an upcoming meeting. And then you might want to take a look in there, Melissa, because there's an extensive discussion about walking forums and in that document. And then if you or anyone else wants to get more information, just let me know, and I'll ask the board if you want me to put more time into it.
All right, anything else, Lee?
No, I'm really spending more time thinking about what this year's color will be, so.
What was it last year?
It was on pink one. All right, Matt?
I mentioned that draft agenda, the town had 4 update items that they had on there, and I think you guys are probably familiar with all those items, but, just so you can be prepared for that meeting, they wanted to upgrade on Shady Grove. Of course, we have the meeting scheduled for February 6th. They want to update from MG School Superintendent Dan Olson about their request for additional land to connect the new school. I can't imagine that they'll be saying too much about that, but I'm sure you can speak in generalities if he's invited. Update on the Wyden development that's tabled indefinitely by the owner. And then on the bike path, talked about that tonight, the construction plan for 2021. And Public Works will continue to work with the county and DOT on that. So. And you could also mention that too, on simple update items like that, they could just call Village Hall. We don't need to have those as agenda items.
Right.
So.
Do you know, is Dan Olson gonna be there at the meeting?
It's a town request, I would assume that they're
I'll see if they've
contacted.
invited and I can send them an email.
We met with the school district last week, and I don't think he was anticipating coming to any meeting.
Anything interesting at that discussion, or we're just talking about the land connecting it, or?
Just with their time, look up the, they provided a timeline of what they're looking to do. They're looking to bring forward the petition for annexation in February.
Okay.
I'm just looking for this email here.
You sent an email, didn't
Yeah.
It was on
Yeah.
Friday
Um,
afternoon.
Anyway, continuing the planning in summer, fall, as far as for their site plan and things like that, and then hoping to begin construction a year from now, in February, so. Yeah, and then they mentioned that they're working with that adjacent landowner
Yeah,
on
that's
this
the
land.
other one.
But, I mean, those are negotiations that their board is having with this landowner, so I can't imagine that they're willing to provide any specifics.
Aaron?
Just had some latest data from POCO. There's a handout on your table, up to the date as far as this afternoon with some of the questions that are out there. There are 4 fairly new questions that are some of POCO's baseline questions. Remember, those are the questions they'll post annually, so we can kind of see how data changes over time. 4 most recent ones are fairly new. There's one other open one regarding the splash pad. About 37% of the respondents said they would use it weekly, and about 2/3 indicated they would use it at least at some point during the summer.
Aaron, do you know the number of respondents in that yet, or doesn't it give you that quite yet?
It's there. I guess I didn't write it down, but it's still open, so there could still be
Okay.
more.
All right.
But is it like around 30 at this point?
Probably, that's kind of where the other ones are falling in. And if you're signed up to answer vocal questions, anyone can go in and see what the results are. So,
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, next time when that's closed, we'll have an update on that. And then there were like 7 other baseline questions that POCO provided that are now closed. And that data's there if you have any questions. And again, I'll post those same questions same time next year, and we'll see if or how they change.
And then we could get data from other Dane County communities and see how we compare to them.
Just some initial feedback that I got after that good presentation last month. Some more active community members they prefer more responses to be anonymous. So if they go, again, I don't know what to tell them outside of the fact that we try to verify if you're actually a Cottage Grove resident or if we're getting responses from outside the community. I don't know if there's some other.
We don't.
But if it's tied to Facebook or if there's a login, you don't get any of that information.
No.
Okay, I'll let them know. That was a couple of questions or concerns.
The only thing that the reason why it's helpful is because then we can see who's actually a registered voter, so that we can, that they're confirmed to be a village resident, and we can actually see, a general area of the village, because there could be certain types of questions where it might be interesting to see who's responding to this. Back as an example, might make some people shudder, but the Thaden Grove, or no, Thaden Pond discussion, the Thaden Pond trails and things like that. If there was a question that was put out for that, it would have been interesting to see if people that didn't live around there were saying yes, and the people that did live around it said no. Things like that.
Is there?
Sorry. Alex, Justitian, village resident. Good point about the anonymity of it, and I have not participated in the poll. A suggestion would be to describe why you're collecting and using that data, so that when you're just upfront with it. Hey, we're using this data. This is how we're aggregating it. Please put in as much information, open and honest, about where you live, and this is why we're using it. Because that just sort of eliminates then the I'm being stalked weirdness of it. So, just an idea.
Okay.
Why talk about it for everybody?
Anything else, Aaron? No. Okay. Chief Labor, anything?
We had a man from the village go missing about a little over a week ago. We were investigating that along with the State Division of Criminal Investigation. While we were doing that, he turned up dead in Cornfield and Marshall, so we're still investigating it with them and hoping to figure out what happened.
Okay. All right. JJ, anything? Nope. John, anything?
We had our second of 4 ski trips today, so we had about 30-ish Cottage Grove young people that braved the elements.
Okay.
Not me.
All right. Lisa? Facebook?
Yep, you had the information in the packet on the Facebook data from 2018. Just one of the initiatives the board wanted to see as one of their priorities going forward. So this just gives you a little bit of info on where it's at. We really amped up in August with our postings, and we send out a calendar and we now schedule our postings. Most of the time, if things come up, we do post in between. But that has helped to get more posts out there, and we're getting more activity with like shares and comments.
Yep. Sure. Melissa probably is contributing greatly to that, right? Yeah.
We try.
Okay. All right, communication.
Oh, Deb?
Oh, there's, sorry. There's Deb. I didn't see your guys' side here. Now he's with. All right. Anything, Deb?
Just a couple of things. In response to the question from the Utility Commission on the payback or foregoing the payback, Amanda Blumberg with Baker Tilly is working on the response and is going to be working with Key Hall on a response for that. As far as the ordinance question that came up, I just urge you to remember that we only have $7,000 in the budget to work on ordinances, so prioritizing them is going to be very important. And then just a final reminder that at least first installment of your property taxes is due January 1st.
Or John, Jack, Jay's. If you get the ordinance committee back up, it would be useful to have Deb and Lisa give us a report on what it costs when we do redo an ordinance. Because that was kind of factored into it last time as well.
Do you have to pay the codification service? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's an annual maintenance fee that eats up a good chunk of that $7,000 to begin with. And so, yeah, it's the legal time, it's the processing time on their end.
Okay.
And you also have to remember that, we have to make sure that we have somebody to police it on the back end. So there's a lot of things to consider when, not saying that they don't all need a lot of work, because they do, but there's a lot of things to consider when
Okay. Communications and miscellaneous business, discuss, consider approval of vouchers. Any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and second to approve vouchers as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Correspondence, I have nothing. Anything? Okay. Upcoming community events, besides cold stuff.
We have the Lions Pancake Breakfast on February 2nd from 8 till 11. We're going to be having pancakes and sausage. Donations will be accepted to benefit scholarships for Monona Grove students. And I hope everybody can make it. You're going to be greeted by Troy, and I will be cooking. So, John will probably be helping out.
I'll be making pizzas at church.
Oh, no.
I'll be there in the afternoon,
Okay.
but I gotta make pizzas at church.
Got it.
Anything else?
Yeah, next Tuesday, January 29th at 7 o'clock, Flynn Hall is the new Optimus Wanted event. And also the Optimists are holding a bingo night, although it's afternoon at 3 o'clock on Sunday, February 7th. It's more for the kids, so, but adults are, should come too. It's, there's a flyer in the hall. And also the Community Engagement, Communications, and Government Relations School Board Committee is putting together a viewing of the documentary about the 13th Amendment called 13th for the public with the help from local community and school groups that are still kind of being worked out. But it's tentatively set for Sunday, February 24th at the Monona Grove High School Auditorium from 3 to 5. Be on the lookout for that.
Anything else? Future agenda items, anybody? Okay. Sounds good. Guess that's it. At this time, I'll make a motion, the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board enters into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1985, Para 1, Para E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This closed session is to discuss boundary agreements and negotiate terms for development in TID number 5. Okay. Quinzella. Panzarellaville, LLC, DBA Oakstone Recreational Facility. Is there a second? Okay, motion and a second. We'll need a roll call vote.
Was there a second?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Thank
No,
you.
that's all right.
All right, Alan? Elmore?
Aye.
Henrik?
Aye.
Lindberg?
Aye.
Radcliffe?
Aye.
Russell?
Aye.
Williams?
Okay, we're closed.
You want me to leave?